Major Spoilers podcast covers news, reviews, and of course, spoilers, and goes into details about the topics discussed. So if you haven't read, listened, or watched the items we talk about, you might want to come back later.
I'm Matthew.
I'm Rodrigo.
And I'm Steven, and you're listening to the Major Spoilers podcast, the podcast for pop culture and comic fans.
In this issue, that time we made a podcast about a slime. That time an alien went wild in paradise. That place over there where Superman has a mullet again. That thing where the doorman always high-fives children in divorce. That show about the podcast from Major Spoilers that air on which it is on Darmok and Jalad at Tanagra.
Welcome to 1105. That's the issue number of the Major Spoilers podcast. Thank you so much for downloading and checking us out this week. A little bit later in the show, that time I was reincarnated as a slime volume 1, as one of our dear listeners asked us to review it on the show. And if you're wondering, how do I make a suggestion? Well, about October of every year, I go into the Discord server. The reason why you want to go into the Discord server, and I say, hey, all you crazy kids, what do you want us to read in the next year? And everybody shouts out their stuff, and I collect those all up, and I put them in a list. And then those are the books that we are going to review in the next year. And if you're wondering, what are you guys going to review in 2025? Then I would point you over to our Patreon page, patreon.com/major spoilers. All you have to do is sign up for free. You don't have to pay anything if you want to just see that schedule. But it's got the complete schedule listed for you to see. It's got the dates and what book we are reading. So you can go and check that out over there. And then, of course, if you want even more stuff, like our discussion about Christopher Nolan, then you definitely want to become a silver level member. $5 a month, less than the cost of a cup of coffee at your favorite coffee place or Carfee place, if you prefer Carfee over coffee.
A carafe of Carfee?
Yes, a carafe of Carfee. You can do that for as little as $5 a month, get access to the pre-show, and then access to hundreds. I think there's almost 1,000 pre-show episodes that are out there. I know that there's over 900 and something listed as podcasts, and I'm sure probably 900 of those are pre-shows. But you access all of those when you subscribe and become a member at patreon.com/major spoilers. Plus, you can see what we're doing in 2025, which is just around the corner. Speaking of what are we doing, we probably ought to do some reviews. So let's get to it. Last week, Matthew, Absolute Batman #2 came out from DC Comics. Jason Aaron, Rafa Sandoval. What'd you think?
Absolute Superman #2. Did I put Batman?
Oh, did I say Batman? I thought I said Superman.
You said Batman.
Oh, okay. Well, it's Absolute Superman #2.
There you go. What did I think? First of all, I did not read Absolute Superman when it came out, but I remember you saying, hey,
it was good.
I kind of enjoyed this.
Yeah, it's really good.
I really, really liked Absolute Batman #1. And so, reading Absolute Batman #1, I said to myself, is this going to be a shared universe of a piece? Is it going to be something where these are all books that have sort of a similar take? Or, as was seeming more likely, are these all going to be books that are differently experimental in different ways and may or may not be as successful for me as Absolute Batman?
So a quick answer to that. Everything takes place in this universe where Darkseid energy has changed the origin stories of all the superheroes. So I believe it does take place in an absolute universe.
Okay, so I hated the term ultimate universe. I hate the term absolute universe. And that's all about me. That has nothing to do with the quality of the book. Here is the thing about this comic that I found fascinating, to steal your catchphrase. It starts with what seems to be a school-age Kal-El on Krypton. It's like a Kal who seems to be somewhere in the, I don't know, maybe the 10 to 12 to 15 range. It's hard to say. But someone who's like a young teen, and he is going to school 6 years ago on Krypton, or at the very least, something that looks like Krypton. And of course, there's a whole running gag about how he gets in trouble because he turned in a paper and it wasn't AI generated. He wrote it himself. And that is clearly against the rules. He didn't source it from the appropriate sources that would just write the paper for him. He went and he wrote it himself. Now, I thought about that metaphor for a good 5 minutes before I turned to the next page. Because on the one hand, that is a very, very interesting take on a very kind of modern problem. And it does give you an expectation of what Aaron and the rest of the creative team are really going for here, because it kind of a moment where you're like, oh, well, what I expected is not what I got. But it also does have that sort of problem. Back in the New 52, I described the biggest problem of it all was the entirety of Aquaman #1 was spent arguing an imaginary point with a straw person about whether or not he talks to fish. And so I had to stop and I had to really kind of digest that and come back into the issue, to which we immediately go into a combat sequence where Lois Lane and Superman are in the middle of a firefight. Somehow there is what appears to be like a big World War II Panzer tank with a helicopter blade on top. And I can't decide, once again, whether that's genius or cheese sandwich, because on the one hand, the 12-year-old in me goes, that is the coolest thing I've ever seen. And the adult in me goes, I don't think it's anything anyway aerodynamically possible. But neither here nor there. As the story goes on, it's very clear that this is not a traditional expectation of Superman. He is wearing a suit that does a lot of super things for him. And it does really neat effects that kind of tie into, oh, I'm a solar powered superhero. So I have this suit that has these flame energy effects that kind of floop around. Something called a sunstone that his mother came up with. Also, Lara, I need to talk about Lara here in a moment. But it's interesting to see this new take on Superman and to see a squadron of peacemakers all wearing John Cena's Beacon of Freedom helmet, wanting to come and take down this new Superman, who clearly, is different. This is a different Superman. He was older when he came to Earth. He's having problems. He's using slang that kind of reminds me of Marvel 2099, because he keeps arguing with the AI in his suit that this girl tried to chuff him, and she's the one that chuffed me, and I don't want to get chuffed again. And I read it, and I read it twice. And as is my custom, I went through for my third pass. So I read it once to try and just absorb it. Then I read it again to see what did I miss. And then I read it a third time just to go, how does this sit with me? How does this metaphorical chili dog sit on my stomach? And we come to, I want to say it's about page 6 or 7, where Superman and Lois are having a fight. And he starts screaming at her that she is arrogant, that she is angry, that she is everything wrong with her planet, and she thinks she's the smartest person in the room. And then I started thinking about the way this Superman acts and realizing that that's exactly how this Superman acts. And once again, I come to that point of, is this awesome? Is this really brilliant? Or is this kind of, a ham-fisted, because they're beating me over the head with these things? And I've come away with one expectation. One, it's a pretty okay comic book. It is not as enjoyable to me as Absolute Batman #1. It has a take on Superman that is new. It is unique. It's not like any Superman that I've ever seen before. And that is both its blessing and its curse. And I think that the success of this book is going to really hinge on whether this different take on Superman, in the streets of Venezuela, fighting off the evil Lazarus Corporation and, possibly having some sort of romance with Lois Lane, assuming she doesn't chuff him, could be something fascinating. But it could also very quickly turn into self-parody. So I am willing to give the creative team the benefit of the doubt. Jason Aaron is a good writer. I do believe that the art in this book is unique. I don't necessarily feel like it's clear, but Rafa Sandoval does a really, really good job of showing us, this strange alien landscape. And then when you get to Earth, everything is clearly in disrepair, and kind of a Star Wars, everything is filthy old technology falling apart kind of thing. All in all, better than average. 3 slices of meatloaf. I am withholding my final opinion on Absolute Superman until I see how this arc wraps it all together. But I will tell you that the whole thing for me is emblemized by a literal big, bulky freaking tank with a helicopter blade on top.
You haven't read Absolute Batman #2 yet?
I haven't read Absolute Batman #2.
Okay.
I haven't read any Absolute Wonder Woman yet. So
all right.
I mean, I can.
Did you read
Absolute
too? You're just going to have to read it and find out. I think that if you're upset by a helicopter landing tank, then you're going to really hate Absolute Batman #2. Did you read Absolute Superman #1?
Yeah, I read it before
okay.
I read this issue.
Okay.
I didn't read it until I read this issue, but I'm also I try not to. I don't know. You know how it is. You make the point every week for a year. You are reviewing a single comic book. We're not reviewing an arc. We're not reviewing a trade paperback. And so I try not to let my issue 1 thoughts intrude too much on my issue 2. I do feel like issue 2 is a more successful overall story than issue 1, if that helps.
Okay. All right.
Absolute Batman #2, the one with that moment that everybody of the universe is like, wait, what, who, what, the thing, and then
so let's just say that the Batmobile is a giant earth moving dump truck.
Didn't they do that in Dark Knight?
No, that was a tank with rubber bullets, I swear.
You swear. Yeah, okay.
Okay. This week from Marvel Comics, I read Alien Paradiso #1 from Steve Fox, Edgar Salazar, and Peter Nguyen. This Marvel, if you didn't know, has the Alien franchise now that Disney owns Fox, and so why not piecemeal this out to its own company and see what they can do? And so far, the Alien franchise seems to be doing okay in the Marvel universe. This is not an Alien versus Avengers type thing. This is like Alien franchise, right? What I like when they do something with Alien is when they are telling a different story, but aliens are involved, the xenomorphs are involved. And in this case, we have 2 undercover agents who are sent to the planet of Paradiso, which is a pleasure planet. It is a vacation destination. Think the Maldives, or think of the Bahamas, or think of somewhere in the South Pacific, Bali or something like that. And so people go there to take their big luxury vacations. So these 2 undercover agents are sent to Paradiso to find out what's going on between this smuggler organization, the Gold Arms, and this other group of bad guys who are human traffickers. And they are trying to get the drop on these guys so that they can stop the illegal activity in this part of the solar system, or of the galaxy. And what's interesting about Paradiso, because there's always something that has to set up a problem, is that when you come to this planet, you have to check all your guns at the door. And so everybody is doing that, right? Even the gangsters who show up because they're in cahoots with the owner of the planet. Not Weyland Yutani, but it is very similar to that. So nobody has any weapons. And so turns out that the head of the human trafficking organization shows up, and he's not feeling well, and all the rest of his people are staying on the ship, and he comes down to meet with the main gangster guy, the Gold Arm guy, and he goes, "Oh, I've got something better to smuggle instead of human trafficking." And then all of a sudden he's like, and then of course, explodey chest, and now we got aliens locked down on this island, and nobody has any guns. It was noise again. It was actually much better than I thought it was going to be, because I do get the point of Weyland Yutani. I do understand that the biggest thing that you can do right now is continue to use Weyland Yutani as a poke at capitalism. But I do enjoy seeing other aspects where Weyland-Yutani doesn't control everything. And when you get to see the underworld part of Megacorp's running the entire show, I think that's where an interesting story takes place. And so when we are now on this Paradise Island and we've got at least 4 aliens running loose, I think this is going to be a pretty fun story. It does say in the solicitations explicit content. And for me, explicit content is like bad language or nudity or something like this. It's blood and guts. It's red band stuff. If you are familiar with what Marvel is doing right now, they'll put a red band on some of their comics because it's got more blood on the inside compared to the regular comic book. And that's really all this is. If you're familiar with Alien and people losing their heads and eyeballs and their internal organs, then you know what you're going to get in this. It's not too gross and over the top. It is the one, I guess the one thing that I will say that I don't care about the art, and I don't know if we've seen it in any of the movies, but we get to see things from the alien point of view. And so we get to see these weird shapes and outlines of everybody, almost like a Predator kind of situation, but not in the style of the Predator. And I'm not sure I like that. So I'm going to, that's the part of the comic that I don't like. Other than that, I thought it was a pretty fun story. I can't wait to see what they do with it. I'm pretty sure this is a 5-issue miniseries. 4 slices of meatloaf out of 5 for Alien Paradiso. It is out this week from Marvel Comics. Now, Rodrigo, I'm so glad that you are reviewing this next thing that you are reviewing, because I blew through all of the episodes today and I have thoughts.
Okay.
So please tell us about Secret Level Season 1, the first 8 episodes, which came out last week, and the rest are coming out tomorrow, I believe.
Oh, yeah. So Secret Level is a project in which each episode is a different short story. Some as long as 20 minutes, some as short as 10 minutes. Each set in the world of a specific video game. So the video games are varied, but here's a list of video games: Armored Core, Concord, Crossfire, Dungeons and Dragons, Exodus, Honor of Kings, Mega Man, New World, Pac-Man, General PlayStation, I guess.
I know. I don't know what that's going to be about.
Sifu, Spelunky, The Outer Worlds, Unreal Tournament. Get your Karafi with your tournament.
Yeah, there you go.
And Warhammer 40K. Space Marine 2, I guess, specifically. This is a very eclectic list of games and one console.
Yeah.
So it's, going in, I'm like, okay, what are they going to do with it? But going in, I also know that the producers of this are also people who were involved, possibly also the producers of, is it Love, Death, and Robots?
Yeah, Love, Death, and Robots. That's basically what this series is, but for video games.
And that is what this series is, but for video games. So that kind of gives you what to expect. Some of these are going to be action set pieces that are awesome. Some of these are going to be like outer limitsy type, like it turns out we were always trapped in the mirror kind of stuff. Some of these are going to be funny, like they're just going to be comedies with maybe something to say. And some of these are going to be very violent and like visceral in the literal sense. And that's actually, that part is kind of a Venn diagram. Multiple one of these are like, here's an action scene that has a lot of blood and guts. So the ones that are out now are Dungeons and Dragons.
What did you think of that one?
Dungeons and Dragons I liked. I
Yeah,
actually
that one
liked
was
it a
okay.
lot.
Yeah.
It's basically they give you just a sprinkling of what's at stake, and then they do basically 2 continuous action set pieces.
Yep.
For it, just excellent. You don't have to know anything about Dungeons and Dragons, although
One of the characters gets
characters.
0 development. Oh,
Oh,
there's
yeah.
like 4 characters that get development. And then there's the ranger,
Yeah,
like-
like the druid.
yeah.
Like doesn't say anything the whole time.
Yeah, it doesn't get any character development.
Yeah, totally. Second one is Sifu. I thought that one was okay. I've never played Sifu.
Yeah, I wasn't familiar with the video game, but I like the animation style, kind of a little bit of Arcane.
Yeah. It looks good, and again, it does have kind of an outer limitsy ending where like the character achieves what he wants, but at what cost, right?
Mm-hmm.
The next one is New World, which I was like, wow, whoever they've got here is doing a pretty good Arnold Schwarzenegger impression. Turns out it's Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Oh, well, that makes sense. He would be good at that.
Yeah. So
it's an interesting one, but I got to say that I think Arnold just showed up and read his lines and left.
I thought it was okay. I mean, certainly I've seen enough Arnold Schwarzenegger movies to see stuff where he's like trying.
Yeah.
But he is not known for like extremely nuanced performance. So when I didn't think that it was him, I was like, well, this is somebody doing, or just, being Austrian, I guess, is what they're going for. Although the character is a big, beefy guy with a square head. So, yeah, they're like, oh, yeah, they're doing Arnold Schwarzenegger. I didn't think about it being him. His performance is okay. Honestly, this is one where the animation does a lot of the heavy lifting.
Yeah.
But I thought this one was good. It's mostly comedic. It has a little bit of heart. It's not bad. You accomplish a lot. Like this one accomplishes a lot. Like this one tells a pretty good story and this is also one of the shorter ones. This one is like, I think like 11 minutes or something like that. I've never played New World. I've never wanted to play New World. This doesn't make me want to play New World, but it's a good one.
Yeah.
Possibly one of the better ones. I mean, I would say definitely one of the better ones.
Of all of them, it is definitely the one that is the most comedic and the one, as you said, the one with the most heart. I just kind of wish that either the animators toned down the over-exaggeration actions or that Arnold Schwarzenegger leaned into a little bit more of the craziness in there, because there was something off between the animation of the king and Arnold's performance.
Yeah. Then we have the Unreal Tournament one. I haven't played Unreal Tournament in 1,000 years. Like Unreal Tournament is, it's a pretty old game. But this one was okay. It's about a robot. So you'd think the blood or Love, Death, and Robots guys would knock the robot one out of the park. I had some trouble figuring out if there was only one robot that was controlling the other robots, or if all the other robots were like, you're the boss robots. Going back and looking at it, I think I kind of know what happened, but there was some stuff about it that was kind of obscured.
Yeah, I think this is the one that's
mostly action.
I think this is the one that's also the one that has the largest political message.
Yeah. So, yeah, at the end, the robots make a stand. This one has Elodie Young, somebody who I hadn't seen in a long time. I guess she's been doing other stuff. She's been doing other projects. I just haven't seen them, but it's nice to see she's like kicking around, getting work. The Warhammer 40K one, I haven't watched.
Ugh.
I did not get a chance to watch this one or the Crossfire one.
Okay.
So
let me give you my thoughts on Warhammer 40K.
Okay. Yeah, please.
It is everything you expect to see in a Warhammer 40K animation. It's super grimdark. It's super bloody. It is super violent. Yeah. And it's, yeah. I think listeners of this show know I'm not a big fan of the comic book series that Marvel put out a couple of years ago. A lot of that just carries over into this, so I'm not a big fan. Now, Warhammer 40K fans are going to love this, I think. So be aware of that.
I'm a little sad that I didn't get to watch it before the show. But if I review, or if either one of us reviews the second half of the season later, maybe we can revisit it.
Okay.
Because Warhammer is like in the conversation right now because
of Henry Cavill.
Originally the idea was that it's a satire of like basically Thatcher's Britain. But like today, especially its American fans, do not get that and do not vibrate in that frequency at all. So what they're getting out of Warhammer 40K is not, I think, what the original intent was. So I'm interested to go back and watch it.
Crossfire is very much your Zero Dark 30, 60, whatever those video games type things are.
Yeah.
Where it's one group against another group. You're trying to stop the mission from happening. Some good action in that one. It's the one that looks, I think, of all of these, the most realistic. It's also the one that has a gotcha ending at the end. So, it was fine.
Okay. Pac-Man was a take.
When they said Pac-Man, I was like, what how are they going to do this with Pac-Man? And then they did. And I was like, okay, they got the cherries in there. They got the Pac-Man in there. I won't be watching this one again. Oh yeah, the ghost.
Yeah. So here's the thing. When this was announced, there were two things that I was really interested in. One, I wanted to see how they were going to do some of the weirder games like Pac-Man. And two, and they don't have it in this drop. We're going to have to wait for the next one. It's Concord, a game that was completely canceled and scoured from the internet before this promotional story came out. So I'm still very interested in that. But as I was going in and I realized that it was the Love, Death, and Robots team, I reduced my expectations.
Oh, you don't like Love, Death, and Robots? I mean, those episodes are also hit and miss, but there's also some really funny ones like the post-apocalyptic robots stuff that I think is incredibly funny, and that's in none of this stuff.
Yeah, there are some good ones in Love, Death, and Robots, but there's also a lot of edginess to it.
Yeah.
It's like, this is so edgy.
And I think especially in the second season.
That's what the Pac-Man one felt like. It's like, what do we do about Pac-Man? And like, again, it's like taking the iconography of Pac-Man and doing something different with it. Like, I don't want to sit here and discourage people from like taking big shots at stuff that maybe doesn't work, but this one maybe doesn't work. Like, it's okay. It's one episode out of all the other ones that mostly accomplish what they want. Like, I thought the Pac-Man one was a big miss.
Yeah, me too. It's my least favorite of the first 8 that have been released.
Yeah. And it's just like, unfortunately, really probably what did it for me, what made me really not like it, is that Pac-Man is a weird game. It's a weird looking game. It's such an old game that like legs hadn't been invented in video games yet. So, and so they took the Pac-Man aesthetic and they transmogrified it to like a pretty generic, grim, dark, like monsters with no eyes and like multiple mouth, like look. Like the monsters on there look like all the monsters in every monster movie nowadays, like the Quiet Place monsters and like the Cloverfield monster and all that stuff. And like, but those individual attempts felt a little bit more purposeful, right? Anyway, not to harp on Pac-Man for too long. The last one is Armored Core, which has Keanu Reeves in it. And that's when I realized that Arnold Schwarzenegger was in
in the other one,
the other one, because I was like, wait a minute, that's Keanu Reeves. If they got Keanu Reeves, I wonder if they got Arnold Schwarzenegger, and sure enough, they did.
Yep.
Also, Tamora Morrison is in this, so this is kind of like all of these episodes are kind of like a scattershot of people you might be familiar with, may have heard of. The New World one has Gabriel Luna. So yeah, if you know Gabriel Luna, he's in this. So anyway, yeah, Armored Core is like a very straightforward, like
mech.
Yeah, mech. Like I'm a cool guy who is like war is hell, and because I've never played the Armored Core games, I guess the idea here is that there is a certain like cast of person that gets augmented to better fuse with the mechs, which makes a lot of sense. Classic mech trope. And he thought he was the last one, but maybe he's not. And then we see how he reacts to that. Amid a honestly kind of blurry, not that the footage itself is blurry, but it's all kind of a blur of like mech fights and stuff. There's some cool stuff. There's a moment where to lose another mech, he like goes into like a human scale like tunnel, and has to like kind of drag himself and propel himself through in his mech as he's going through. So there's like some interesting, good kind of things that maybe you haven't seen in another mech piece. This one was okay. I love Keanu Reeves. Like everybody who's my age, The Matrix was formative. So, just hearing his voice, I was like, it's Keanu Reeves. I love this one already. And of course, the character looks just
like him.
Yeah. So I didn't get that at first because the character's covered up. On purpose, they do kind of a face reveal. So this one was okay. I get the feeling that if I had played the last Armored Core game, I'd probably be getting a lot more out of this one, which is interesting. It's interesting because some of these is like, if you know them, like the Dungeons and Dragons one, I know everything that's happening, right? Like what gods are being worshipped, what like class features are being used. And I didn't feel like that added too much, but I thought it was good in general, right? It's like the things that the characters do make sense for how the characters look. Like here's a wizardy one and it's shooting fire. Here's like a kung fu one and it's punching guys. It makes sense, right? For the Armored Core one, I was like, I feel like I need to know something about Armored Core to really understand what's happening here. So, I would say, Love, Death, and Robots, this is scatter shot. You're gonna watch these, and maybe you'll have the complete inverse opinions of me, but I can guarantee you this: there's at least one of these that you're really not gonna like. That is going to either repel you, or you will find it incredibly boring, even though it's only 15 minutes. And there's probably something here that you're actually really gonna be into, even if it's a property that you're not familiar with. Just because statistically speaking, they're throwing so much stuff at the wall that there's something here for everybody. Unfortunately, you might have to sift through some stuff you don't want to get it. I'm going to give it 4 slices of meatloaf. Again, there's 2 that I haven't seen. But from Steven's description, it kind of sounds like they cancel each other out.
Yes, I think they would cancel each other out. And I think that the Warhammer and the Armored Core one have a lot in common theme wise. Also written by JT Petty, both of them. He's he does the Tom Clancy's Splinter Cell and Splinter Cell Pandora Tomorrow. He was the writer for both of those games.
Oh.
One thing that I will say about this, and same way with Love, Death, and Robots, I'm glad that there are some hits and I'm glad that there are some misses. The other thing that I really like about this is that it's not one studio doing all of this. It's like so many different studios are doing.
Yeah,
you've got Unit
absolutely.
Image, Digi Pictures, Blur Studios, Illusorium, Platige Image. They're all just like, hey, we'll do this, or I don't know how it was farmed out or what was done. But each studio, it's kind of like a rap battle of animation, right? Where every studio gets to come and say, oh, we've got the Warhammer. And then somebody else is like, oh, yeah, well, we got Crossfire. And so you get to see different takes on these things and how each animation studio approaches their style and bringing these stories to life, because everyone has a very distinct look to them. Not a single one of them is similar to one another in look. And so I really appreciate that. Even if I don't care for some of the games or some of the subject matter, I still applaud everybody for doing an amazing job for the animation.
Yeah. I'm really looking forward to the next one because I feel like we got most of the grimdark ones in this one. And so we're still looking at Outer Worlds, Spelunky, Mega Man, like franchises that lend themselves to like at least a little bit more color on screen. Not that some of these weren't colorful, but like there is a general kind of like darkness to all of these.
And of course there's Concord.
Yeah, very much looking forward to the Concord one. It's like that's literally why I'm doing this. I'm watching the whole series so that I don't feel as much of a jerk for like my my sickening need to watch the Concord one to see what they wanted to do with this franchise.
What if the Concord short is so popular that everybody is just like, this thing is so good, we want more. And instead of becoming a hit video game franchise, it becomes a hit animation franchise.
Yeah, I mean, it's owned by Sony, so Sony can just turn it over to any of their subsidiaries. Just be like, hey, Spider-Verse crew, start cracking on Concord.
Yeah. All right, thank you very much. The next set, I thought they hit next week on the 17th is when the second grouping arrives, and I can't wait. I was very disappointed when it ended, but it's go check it out. The only other thing that I hate is I'm not a fan of being an Amazon Prime member, and then they pull this scam where for an additional $3 a month, we'll remove all of your ads, and I'm like, ugh, you're already getting me for whatever my Amazon Prime subscription costs, for
$14.99.
Well, whatever it is it $14.99 or is it $99 for the year or whatever that they've upped it up to and includes your Amazon Prime subscription?
Pay for anything by the year.
It's like ridiculous.
Can I tell you guys something?
Yeah, please.
I got an Amazon TV.
Oh, nice.
I think I mentioned to you guys that my TV broke.
Oh yeah, that's right. We talked about that a few weeks ago. Yeah.
I went out. My wife and I went out and got an Amazon TV. And one of the things that I find very disconcerting is that back when we had like a regular non-affiliated TV, we used a Chromecast to access, Disney Plus, Hulu, Netflix, all that stuff.
Right.
And Chromecast, like everybody else, has ads, but all the ads were for media that you could access through the Chromecast. For some reason, I find it very disconcerting that I will turn it on and, I'm like sitting down and like trying to not like sit on the cat and like looking down and stuff. And then I look up and, a commercial thing on like like a banner for a TV show fades away, and there's just a thing for like Glade plugins.
Yeah.
Right? Like for some reason, and then like also when I'm watching stuff on Prime, it's like sometimes it advertises other shows on Prime, and sometimes it's just like an ad for like something ridiculous, like batteries or like for a thing. And for some reason, I find that really disconcerting and upsetting. Is like I've gotten used to this idea that I'm gonna go on Hulu and Hulu's gonna show me ads for other shows, and I'm gonna be on YouTube, and yeah, they have ads for all kinds of stuff, but that's different. That feels more like TV, where it's like you just see a random bunch of ads before you watch your video. But there's something about the way that Prime does it that really throws me off. It's like, here's a trailer before your movie. However, the trailer is for like our new food delivery. Would you like some Kraft singles?
Yeah. Now I will say,
singles, please.
don't say
it out loud because your Alexa's going to get it.
I will say that Secret Level Season 1 is brought to you commercial free, except for the one that they run before the episode that tells you that they're commercial free, and it's something for a Slim Jim, some kind of Slim Jim meat stick thing.
Snap it to us.
No, it's not. It's not a Slim Jim. It's one of the other ones. It's like Sasquatch, whatever.
Yeah, it's like it's like protein stick.
See, it's working, Jeff Bezos. We can't even tell you what the product is that's being advertised. So there you go.
Don't tell him that. He's just gonna try harder.
Well, what he could do, if he wanted to, is take some of his billions of dollars that he has, and he can come over to patreon.com/major spoilers and become a member of our Major Spoilers Patreon and join all of the cool kids. In fact, Jeff Bezos he just might be the one person that would be able to subscribe to the Daddy Warbucks level. The Daddy Warbucks level is only $15,000 a month, Jeff Bezos. But we will fly to your house and we will record a show live in your living room. We will take you out to McDonald's if you've never been to one. It's going to be an interesting experience for you. And then we may wreck your toilets, multiple toilets, because I'm sure you have more of those in your house, all for that $15,000 a month that I know you, Jeff Bezos, could afford. Now, for the rest of you, I know you don't have the plumbing skills to replace a toilet after we've come for a visit. So what you might want to do is sign up for the $5 a month level, where you get access to the Major Spoilers podcast pre-show, where we talk about, a bunch of other stuff. This week it was Christopher Nolan movies, Marvel Rivals, and Batman and Ghost Rider. You'll get up to 4 bonus episodes a month when you sign up for that $5 a month level. Or if you want up to, I think, 8 bonus episodes a month, consider becoming a $10 a month member, the gold member. We just released the VIP chat for the month, so you can find out what's going on behind the scenes. I rant a little bit about YouTube and now Threads with their copyright claims, which are ridiculous. And what else? We talk about, J. Michael T. asked a really good question about what I would change to Major Spoilers. So there's some good thoughts there. You can check that out when you become a gold level member at patreon.com/major spoilers. And listen, I know it's the end of the year. You don't, you've taken care of all your tax obligations and your write-offs. You're busy trying to find presents for all of the loved ones in your life. And so maybe you just don't have time to give a $5 a month or sign up for a full year and get a little bit of a discount. Maybe you don't have that right now. You can still sign up for a free membership. Now, you don't get access to all the exclusive bonus stuff, but you do get access to, like what I mentioned earlier in the show, a rundown of all the trade paperbacks that we will be reviewing in 2025. So again, patreon.com/major spoilers is where you want to go. Jeff Bezos, you definitely want to sign up and become our daddy at the Daddy Warbucks level, $15,000 a month. We thank you, Jeff Bezos, in advance. Let's talk manga. And that time I got reincarnated as a slime. This thing is so weird and interesting because when it was first suggested to us, I thought it was Rodrigo, but it turns out that it is Liquid Cake who suggested we review this. I was like, he wants us to review this. I went down just did a cursory search, and you find the light novel, this kind of like fan fiction thing that Fuse wrote. And I was like, he wants us to review a prose book for the podcast. That doesn't make sense. And then I was like, maybe I'm missing something. There's an anime based on this thing. So I was like, well, typically we don't review animes in here, but maybe. And then I was looking around. I'm like, oh, finally, here's the manga adaptation that is the adaptation of the light novel that was then used as the basis for the anime. So it's a long road to get here. And really, if you're going to read this, just go to an outlet that sells manga and pick it up there, or Kodansha. That's where we're getting it, because Kodansha is the publisher here in the United States, Kodansha USA. And you can pick up the volumes there. You can get them digitally, or you can get physical copies, or you could go to Amazon and buy them there. And a little bit comes back our way, because Daddy Bezos is supposed to give us a little bit of money every time you use that link. The more of you that use the link, the more money Bezos has to give us. So think about that. So I went into this with like little to no expectation, except that my perspective was this guy was probably not a nice guy in the real world. He is killed, and then he is reincarnated as a slime, as the lowest level kind of creature you could get in a fantasy world. And so that's his penance. But even before you get out of the second chapter, he's defeated a dragon.
Mm-hmm. I don't know that it's,
I mean, sort of
a penance thing. Now, here's the thing.
No, it may not be, because that's what he was thinking of when he was being rebooted or whatever.
Right. Yeah. Here's the thing that I discovered about this, because I've heard about this, and the first few times I heard it, I thought it was a joke from Rodrigo. And then you said, oh, it's a light novel. So I did what I always do when I think, oh, this is cool, hip stuff. So I called the child and I said, the child, do you know about that time I got reincarnated as a slime? And they're like, I know. And I'm like, okay, what's that mean in English? She's like, oh, that time I got reincarnated as a slime. And I'm like, okay, first of all, stop being me when I was your age. And second of all, is this good? And then they started to enthuse about it. So I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to go into this. And the first thing that happens in the story is literally the title of the book, which is wonderful up to a point. But then I'm also like, okay, I don't know anything else to expect of this story. Because I'm just like, okay, well, there's this guy, he dies, he comes back as a little orange slime. Then what? And the story was just like, oh, okay, so yeah, there's this giant dragon under the earth, and we have to, like, there's cages and magic and crazy, wacky stuff and girls everywhere, and don't have bad thoughts about girls when you die, or else you'll come back as a little orange blancmange. And I'm just like, what am I reading here?
Well,
and that's literally how I felt for like 155 pages.
Yeah, go for it, Rodrigo.
Yeah, it's pretty unusual. I'm into it because it very much is operating on a level of like fantasy RPGs,
Mm-hmm.
right down to the fact that there's like, things have like abilities, and the abilities have names.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I like, okay, so this is an isekai, right? Isekai meaning like a thing where like the protagonist is transported to a different world, usually some sort of magical world. But a lot of isekai, especially the earlier ones, usually the character has to die to go to the magical world. But usually after they die, they get to the magical world and they are themselves still.
Right.
The twist here is that the person goes to the magical world but is reincarnated as a slime, slimes being the lowest level enemies in a lot of RPGs, especially Japanese RPGs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I thought that was interesting. I really thought that we were going to spend more time with him being a little useless slime.
Mm-hmm.
But pretty much immediately we realized that, kind of accidentally, he ended up with a suite of powers that make him actually extremely powerful, and basically starts using them right away. And becomes escapes an underground prison, takes over a goblin village, saves them from some wolves and then recruits the wolves. So basically has a small like wolf and goblin empire by the end of this whole thing.
Yeah, also gets a little harem, fantasy stuff going on, and and dwarves. Lots of dwarves running around. I guess when it started, I was kind of like, well, this guy's kind of distasteful. I really expected him to be continued distasteful as a character, and to a point, he kind of is. But he's also realizing that magic. He's got some powerful magics, and he can do great things with them. He doesn't enslave anyone. He's like, hey, goblins, follow me. I'll give you names. That'll give you power. Wolves, you can bow down to me and I will be your alpha leader, or else I will destroy you. He doesn't really use any of his powers for bad, right? They're generally to help. And again, like you said, from video games, RPG video games, etc., slimes are pretty low, and then goblins are next, and then occasionally you're going to fight some wolves as your adventure. So he's slowly building up through these different ranks and characters. And I like that he is, quote unquote, defeating them, or at least getting them to his side in ways that are not ultra-violent. Now, again, we just talked about Secret Level Season 1 with all of its ultra-violence. That also doesn't bother me. And so I think that there are some expectations that have been turned on their ear that I wasn't expecting. And so that made it a little bit more palatable for me when reading this first volume.
I can see that. And I feel like the idea of a character who seems to be low and useless and the smallest and the least powerful turning out to be incredibly resourceful and awesome is a very, manga animation.
Very much so. Yeah. That's what I was going to say. It's very much on the bullseye.
Yeah, it's an isekai staple. Isekai literally means another world. But the best part for me of this is, when I say I had no idea what I was reading, that's not like any kind of indictment, because a lot of times when I'm reading, honestly, lots of stories, watching a movie. I watched Smile 2 this weekend. I predicted every single plot point until the one that got me. And the one that got me was good. Mm-hmm. But for like 3/4 of that film, I was just like, and 1 and 2, and I know where this goes. And I never felt that during this book. And as I go through it, I realize two things. One, this feels very much like a story that is, how we'll see books like, I always think of The Dirty Pair or anything that Adam Warren does, where you're like, oh, that's American manga. This feels like a manga take on like a Dungeons and Dragons type story. And it's not the first one we've seen, because I know that Delicious in Dungeon, which came out after this, but we've talked about more.
So Dragon Quest, like Final Fantasy Dragon Quest came out in like the 80s and 90s. So like that's where a lot of the Japanese take on the Dungeons and Dragons style stuff comes from. So there's a pretty long history in Japan, and it's kind of grown its own type of fantasy. And like, again, that's why like any Japanese person that picks this up, they're like, oh, a slime is a level 1 enemy. In like American RPGs, like that is sometimes the case, but not always. Like that's not necessarily a thing, but in Dragon Quest, that's a thing, right?
Yeah. And it really is interesting to see these bits and pieces, in their own mythos and their own sort of channel doing the crazy things when you're like, okay, well, I'm a tiny little slime, but my name is Horimoto Tempest. I'm like, okay, that's cool. But again, you're a snot bubble. And so I feel like as I was going through this, I kept wanting in my head to think, okay, I think it's going here. But then it never followed anything that I thought I was going to see.
Yeah.
And at the end, it's like, I don't know if I loved it, But I definitely respect it. I admire it.
Yeah.
Just at how good it was at kind of destroying any expectations I had for the narrative.
Yeah. I think part of the problem, and this is always, I think, the case when we read a first volume of something,
early installment weirdness.
This is volume 1 of 21.
Sure.
And there's a lot of stuff that's going on. I think the thing that you may be thinking, Matthew, where is this going, or what is the problem with it? The problem that I had is there is no easily identifiable bad guy. There is the king or whatever that is like, oh, the dragon is no longer protecting our kingdom. We need to be prepared. It doesn't necessarily make him a bad guy yet. And then, of course, the slime and his goblin companion go into the town, and they are being put down upon because they're a goblin and a slime, and they get into trouble because people are instigating problems, so they get thrown in jail. But again, there's nobody who's really the big bad, and that's what I was kind of expecting in this first volume, I guess, is to kind of identify who the big bad is, and it could be just the slime himself. I don't know. But there's 21 volumes of this that we would have to get through to get all the way to the end. I'm not sure I'm going to go all the way. And that's okay. Maybe you guys want to. But I thought it was interesting. I thought it was fun. It was different. Like you said, Matthew, that it wasn't what I was expecting. It wasn't as I went into it thinking that it was going to be a little bit more creeper kind of stuff.
You were expecting grape juice. You were expecting more.
No. I was expecting a little bit more. This guy is kind of a sleaze and
sliming under a girl's skirts.
Yeah. And there's a little bit of that in here, right? But
there's also a little bit of that.
There's a lot of restraint too, right? Which I was really expecting, especially when you are looking at, this is not some professionally published original story, right? This is just somebody who decided to write this stuff and post it, and it got a following, and then it turned into, a manga, and then an anime, and then all these other things. And so oftentimes when you read the fan fiction online, it goes into places that you're quickly just like setting it down and pushing it away and turning out the lights and burning down the house when you leave. This is not that.
The thing is with manga and anime, sometimes the big professional ones are like that too.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
There's just, the times are changing everywhere, but it's like, I don't know if you guys have ever seen the is it 7 Deadly Sins or something like that anime, but the main character is just like straight up sexually assaulting one of the other characters like at all times.
Right.
Like, so
well, and even our recent discussion of Da-da-don or whatever it is.
Yeah. So there's definitely a conversation going on between like where's the line between like characterization, like the slime used to be a 37-year-old virgin who clearly had some stuff in his hard drive that he wanted deleted because that's literally the last thing he does before he dies. And it's like, that's
literally what I've told my kids. If I die, immediately delete everything on my hard drive.
Yeah. So, right. So it's like that character being a little pervy is characterization, right?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, because of the long and tragic history of extremely pervy anime and manga, it's hard to tell where the line is. And the line is partially cultural too. So it's difficult. That's why there's some difficulty talking about Dan-Da-Dan, a show that I feel lives in like a teenage horniness world.
Yes, very much so.
And is therefore okay that the characters end up in their underwear next to each other sometimes because it's like a horny little teenage will they won't they kind of thing, right? And like that's okay. Like I feel like that's okay. But also sometimes I'm like, well, I'm a 41-year-old man watching this.
Yeah,
right.
Like
am I now on some sort of list?
Yeah, it's like it's like the quantum uncertainty of perviness is like, is this not bad because it's like a bunch of teenagers and like it's done somewhat tastefully, but it's like now that it's being observed by me, is it bad now? Like, I don't know.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
complicated questions, but that time I got reincarnated as a slime, I feel at least this first volume never fully crosses that line.
Yeah, right. That's
In
what I was
fact,
really surprised about.
there's like a little cute and sweet about it once you
Mhm.
get past like a couple pages of him like basically getting a
Drooling over
nosebleed if
boobs.
he had a nose.
Yeah.
Is like after that, like he's like sitting on a cute girl's lap and clearly he's very happy to be there. And he's just having conversations with people and stuff. And it's like everybody loves him because he's been helping people.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, this is fine. Like
Yeah.
I'm just
Yeah.
looking at it like this is fine.
Yeah. Now I want to, part of me then wants to say, oh, I would be interested in reading the next 20 volumes just so I can see the slime go from zero to hero.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to commit that much time. Now, there is an anime version of this.
Yeah,
And I
that's what
reached out-
I'm curious about it.
I reached out to the sidekick, 13, going to be driving soon, so be aware of everyone. I asked him, I said, have you watched that time I got reincarnated as the slime? He said, only the first few episodes. Did you like it? Yeah, it was all right, just not my thing. I know a lot of other people like it, though. Why didn't you like it? It's just a little boring for me. I don't think I got far enough in to enjoy it. So when he says first few episodes, I think first 4 or 5 episodes for him.
Yeah, it's like for anime, that means the first 50 episodes.
Yeah. Yeah, now this is the kid. I mean, this kid knows a lot of anime. I'm really surprised, both my kids, the depth of their anime knowledge, both manga and anime, because they had both read Dan Da Dan before they had watched the show.
Sure.
And so I was surprised by that. The sidekick has read all of, was it
Chainsaw
Hunter
Man?
X? Well, yes. And then Hunter x Hunter. What's the other one that we did? Demon Slayer. Yeah, he's got the whole giant collection of Demon Slayer that he's read. Which does bring me, I'm going to divert just a little bit. There was a conversation up on the Blue Ski a couple of weeks ago where people were commenting about why don't people, what do we need to do as an industry to get the young ones to read comics? And the answer is kids are already reading comics. They're just not reading your comics. The kids are, and I didn't realize this year, Dog Man is getting an animated movie. Guarantee you that one will be #1 at the box office. But my kid read Dog Man growing up. My kids have read Diary of a Wimpy Kid. My kids have read Captain Underpants. My kids have read all of these manga titles. They're reading the comic medium. They're just not reading DC and Marvel. And so when people are like, kids aren't reading comics. Yes, they are. They most definitely are. They're just not reading the same things that you're reading.
Yeah. And DC and Marvel have not been targeting kids since like the 70s.
Well, I mean, and the one time that they did it with their DC Inc. and their DC Kids line, 2 lines that were specifically targeting young kids, and YAs, they canceled both of those lines as soon as the first volume was released. I think that's a Zaslav issue more than anything, but maybe not Zaslav, but they canceled those things before they even had a chance to get their footing. And there was going to be some great stuff out of that. So, when people complain about why aren't kids reading comics these days, they're just not reading the comics that you want them to read. So you either need to change or go towards your audience.
And kids are a huge market, right? Because their parents buy them stuff. And it's like, that is the reason why Disney acquired Marvel. Like, Disney doesn't, like, they're like, okay, we've got the, like, young girls market cornered. We want, like, the young boys market. So we need to get all these superheroes. And the movies help with that, certainly. But it's like, all of the young kids are reading manga. My nephews, that's what they're reading. My nephew's like, hey, have you read this? And I'm like, no, but I'm watching the anime. It's like, okay.
Yeah. So here's the answer, Marvel, if you're listening, because I know you are. You and Jeff Bezos are both sitting on the couch together with Zaslav and Iger, and you're trying to figure out how to control the world. Here's the answer. Get Peach Momoko's titles into the hands of the youngs, and they will discover the X-Men's and the Iron Man and all of that stuff. because I guarantee you, I think I'm going to do this experiment. I'm going to give the sidekick Peach Momoko's X-Men run and see if he suddenly becomes a fan of the X-Men.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And then say,
I mean,
oh, here's all these other people
they-
that have done X-Men too.
They re-released the first 3 volume of Runaways as in the size of a manga.
Mhm. Oh yeah,
long
that's
time
the
ago.
other thing. Yeah, that's the other thing that they're doing.
So, I'm sure something like that got somebody.
Yeah, so the DC Comics is also doing that. They're re-releasing everything in the manga-sized format. It's I don't know what they're calling it. Not digest size, but it's basically that. And the sales have been through the roof on the titles that they've released. And of course, that's Watchmen and Dark Knight Returns and a bunch of others. But it's because easy accessible. It's right there with all the manga. It's with all the other stuff that people can see, and people can just slip them into their backpacks easily, even though it's like 3/4 the size of a regular comic book page, which for 9 panels, just for me, has to be incredibly hard to read. But then again, I'm not a young. So, I'm going to do this experiment where I'm going to get him the Peach Momoko stuff and just say, read this. And I just want to see what his reaction is, because it looks, her stuff looks like manga, acts like manga, oftentimes is manga disguised as a Marvel comic. I think he may dig it. So we'll use him as a test subject of 1. But back to that time I got reincarnated as a slime. I kind of liked it at the end. I kind of wanted more. I was kind of sad that the volume ended where it did. I'm fine with the art. I'm fine with the backwards reading. I just don't know if this grabbed me the way I wanted it to. It certainly, defied my expectations, which was good. And so I think if you're looking for something a little different, if you're into the fantasy stuff and you want to do fantasy manga, because I don't think we've done fantasy manga before, I think go check it out. I really say go check it out and then see if you want to get into the rest of it. Now, Liquid Cake is probably like, oh, I was hoping you guys would jump up and down about this. I'm on the fence on this. I would read a second volume, but I don't know if I can commit to 21 right now. So that's my thought. It's definitely a check it out kind of series. Matthew, what about you?
As a whole, I feel like I'm kind of a freaky little weirdo. And as a freaky little weirdo, this book speaks to me in a way that a lot of, Western comics and sequential media don't. And it also does give me that really, really wonderful feeling from when I was a kid, where everything is new and fresh and unexpected and crazy. And I remember going, "Hey, wait, what's going on over here? Who is this ghostwriter guy? What is all this stuff?" And not knowing things is really kind of awesome. So I feel like, I don't know if I would jump up and down. I'm not necessarily going to tell you to rush right out into buying frenzy, because this is weird enough that I feel like, and this may just be an artifact of my youth, the normies won't necessarily dig it, but that may not be the case anymore. I'm an old dude. Sometimes I'm way behind the curve. The other day at work, somebody was just like, "Man, who all reads comic books?" And I expected to be the only one. And like 15 people were like, "Yeah, all of these is great. And this is great." And I'm like, all right, it's not 1984 anymore. So that said, definitely worth a check out. If you are a weirdo and you say that Matthew, he's weird like me, then it would be a rush right out into buying frenzy.
So you're going to read the other 20 volumes?
Oh God, no.
Rodrigo, final thoughts. Rodrigo, final thoughts from you.
So I'm on record as saying that I don't really like medieval fantasy stuff anymore.
Way to go, Wizards of the Coast.
Yeah, once you've redefined the form, it's just, it loses all of it.
Once you've shattered all paradigms, then what's the point, right?
Right. It just
but I keep finding worthwhile writing within that sphere. One of them was Delicious in Dungeon, and another one is this volume of that time I got reincarnated as a slime, because it's like it's very much moving on these tropes that if you've played Dragon Quest or Final Fantasy, you are going to get.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like doing its own things with them, like behind the references and behind all that stuff. There's stuff like, for example, there's all of these monsters, and it's like if you name a monster, the monster becomes more powerful and like more specialized, right? It's like that is actually freaking rad.
Yeah, it is.
Like,
Right.
that is like such a good idea, and it plays on stuff that you see in role-playing games. In Exalted, we used to joke that, because you can get mobbed by extras, which is something that's been picked up by a lot of other games. And the book specifically says like extras are nameless. Once you name a character, they're no longer an extra. So we do things like, we're like on a boat and we're like, we have to name every character in the crew so that they get like 5 health boxes instead of 1. And that's kind of what's happening here, but it's done in a really good, smart, interesting way. I think I'm gonna search out the anime and see what happens. A lot of the time when the anime comes out, they take design stuff from the later volumes and reapply it to the beginning. So we'll see. There's a very naked girl in it, so
Yep.
I'm a little worried about that. But we'll see how they handle it.
All right, you can watch it on, it looks like Crunchyroll, Disney Plus, Hulu, and Amazon Prime. So it's
Nice.
all
Wow.
over the place if you want to go and watch
Nice.
it. And that is where we're going to wrap it up this week. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for checking us out. If you found value in the show, certainly head over to our Patreon page where you can find even more fun, including the Major Spoilers podcast pre-show. You can find out more at patreon.com/Major Spoilers. One more regular show in 2024. And there's one annual thing we haven't checked out yet. That's right, Asterix. Asterix and the Caesar's Gift next week on the Major Spoilers podcast. Why? Because we know that you love comics and we do too, and we will talk with you soon.
If I had the X-ray vision of a Superman, I could save a few bucks and stand around and read through the covers of the comics on the stand. But although every other page would be backwards, I suppose I could still read the evens and the odds. Well, I don't know. Guess I haven't thought this all the way through. Plus, as soon as the comic book store guy knew, he kicked my butt out on the corner. What a major spoiler! What a major spoiler! Think about a better way. If I was hulking green or gray, I could just bust through that brick wall, take their comic books away. But then the little meat would deal with all the tanks and bombs and guns. Have you ever tried to read a series with all that going on? Guess I need to rethink this plan. How would I bag and board my comics with such huge hands? Guess I already told ya. What a major spoiler. What a major spoiler. Yeah, yeah, yeah. What a major spoiler. What a major spoiler. If I'm stark raving rich like a man of iron, I might not be surprised to find that I might actually have the heart cold to follow an entire storyline. But would I really even need to read up on all those escapades? I mean, who needs such distractions when your sister's such a babe? But the downside is such a beast. Being shot up in a fun, being in the Middle East with a gang sign throwing soldier. What a major spoiler. What a major spoiler. Yeah, yeah, yeah. What a major spoiler. Whoa, 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 whoa. What a major spoiler.
This podcast is copyright 2024 by Major Spoilers Entertainment, LLC.